All right, assalamu alaikum to everyone. We should be live on YouTube right now, and we are live on the Zoom meeting as well. And we'll get started in just a few moments. All right, Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. All right, brothers and sisters in Islam, this is the program Why Are We Losing Faith? My name is Isa Wood. Or a little bit about myself so you understand how this program came about. I've been traveling the United States for the past 6 years every single weekend, and I've had an opportunity to visit about 200 Muslim communities, and I've seen the state of the Muslim youth in many of those communities, and it's quite poor. A lot of Muslim youth are not practicing Islam, and we're talking like the high school age and college age Muslim youth, but especially we've found that there are now Muslims who have left Islam. And not only have they left Islam, but they've, become enemies of the Muslims. So we have this organization, Ex-Muslims of North America, started in 2013, 24,000 members. Now they're putting up billboards around the country to advertise their disbelief in our religion. And I think that at this point, we need to try and figure out what's wrong, what's going on, why is this happening? So I put this presentation together to try to give us a little bit of insight, okay? All we really need to do is think about the things that the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran warned us that if we did them, it would destroy our faith, okay? So I'll do my best tonight to show you some insight into it and then offer you some solutions. And once again, based on actual experiences dealing with Muslim youth, many Muslim youth. Number one, when we talk about Iman, faith, it's very easy to understand. All we need to do is go to Surah Al-Mu'minun, the chapter of faith. And we're going to find out very soon what our young people are doing. And let's see if that lines up with what the Quran or how the Quran describes believers. So Allah starts off, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون. That believers will be successful. And then Allah goes on to describe their qualities. Number one, they're humble in prayer. They have khushu' in prayer. Number two, they avoid idle talk. Number three, they purify themselves. Number four, they protect their private parts, except for their wives and those whom their right hands possess. For them, they're free of blame. But whoever seeks a way beyond that is a transgressor. And the believers are those who are true in their trusts and covenants, and those who are properly observant in their prayers. These are the ones who will obtain the reward of paradise as their own. They will be there forever. Now, before we continue, tonight's lecture is for 13 and up only, meaning you need to be at least 13 years old to continue in this class tonight. Okay? If you continue in this class and you're not at least 13 years old, then you are disobeying the presenter, and I'm not responsible for anything that you learn tonight. Okay? You have been warned. If you're a parent and you have anyone in the room right now who's not at least 13, you need to ask them to leave. Okay? And that's because this is an adult topic. And I'm assuming that you've had conversations with your children about janaba and ghusl and puberty and all of those things, so that when we talk about this topic, we can talk to them like they are young adults. So I want you to take notice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a few things, and one of them he mentions is about people protecting their private parts. And this is referring to people making sure that when it comes to their desires, that they're only gratified in a halal marriage relationship. And then Allah warns, but anyone who seeks a way beyond that, that person becomes a transgressor against Allah. One of my theories for why I believe we have people who've left the faith of Islam and now become our enemies is because many of them are engaged in the very activities that would cause you to become a transgressor against Allah. Meaning not only are you going against Allah's limits, his laws, but you're going against Allah himself. And that causes you to develop animosity towards God and animosity towards believers. So here's some statistics. I want to give you as much science as I can tonight, as well as Quran and Hadith. Number one, Pew Research from 2007 to 2014, the fastest growing religion in America was not Islam. Okay? And that's important to note because we often hear ourselves repeating that a lot. Now, who is the fastest growing religion in America? They are called the nuns. They are people who have either A, become atheists, B, they have become agnostics, meaning either they don't believe there's a God or they neither affirm nor reject that there's a God, or this group of non-affiliated people, meaning they grew up as a Muslim or Christian or Jew, but they no longer affiliate with that religion. This group grew by almost 20 million members in just 7 years. Unprecedented growth. With almost 3,000 Islamic centers in North America, all giving dawah in some form or fashion, we don't even have close to that number of people becoming Muslim during that time. Okay, here we go. A very clear statement from the Prophet ﷺ talking about things that will cause faith to leave you. La yazni zani hina yazni wa huwa mu'min. Okay, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a person committing zina is not a believer as long as he or she commits zina. A person who steals is not a believer as long as they commit theft, and the one who drinks wine is not a believer as long as he drinks it, and Toba is accepted after that. So the Prophet ﷺ mentions three things, and we add a fourth one because there's another hadith that goes with this, which says that if you do any of these four major sins, it will cause faith to temporarily leave you. One hadith from Abu Hurairah mentions that your iman will hover above you while you commit these sins. Now let's try to understand why. There are certain sins that when you do them, the only way you can do them is by convincing yourself that you're not being watched, okay? Like a good example is theft. Like someone goes to take something, right? If they think they're being watched, they won't take it. But as long as they believe no one is watching, they'll take it, okay? So notice that theft is one of the things on the list, but also murder, right? Consuming intoxicants. And of course, zina, right? Which is basically gratifying your desires outside of a halal marriage. Well, it works basically the same way. The only way someone who is a believer can do these sins is to temporarily stop believing. Meaning, while at one point they may have believed that Allah was watching them and the angels are recording them and the Quran said don't do it and the Prophet warned them not to do it, and on the Day of Judgment they're responsible for it, right? Because none of these things you can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. They're all aspects of the unseen. In order for them to go through with these types of sins, they have to temporarily suspend that belief just long enough to go through it. Okay? Now, as soon as they finish the sin, it says Toba is accepted after that, meaning that they can come back to Allah and they can ask for forgiveness. Okay? So if you want to think about it like this, it's kind of like Iman is like a little candle on inside of you. Like it's a flame that's burning. Whenever you pray, whenever you fast, whenever you read Quran, whenever you do a good deed, it's like you're feeding it gasoline or propane gas. It causes the flame to burn bright. And that light allows you to symbolically see the unseen, meaning you sense the presence of Allah around you and the angels around you, and you become more aware of these things. But there are certain sins, if you commit them, you blow out the candle. And since there's no flame now, you can go and perform rituals and do good deeds, but you don't feel the presence of the unseen around you. And so your salat and your Quran reading and everything becomes a chore and a task because you don't feel, right, the unseen. You don't sense the presence of Allah around you. Well, if you do one of these sins long enough and too many times, the Quran says, بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ, that a person's heart becomes sealed because of what they've earned. Meaning that whereas your light may come back on after you commit these sins once or twice or however many times, but when you continuously do them all the time, the light stays off until you stop doing them. And then you give it some time and the light will come back on. Okay? Now, specifically on the sin of zina, the Prophet ﷺ warned us that there are different types of zina. Okay? There's the zina of the eye, which is to gratify your desires by looking, gratifying your desires by listening, the zina of the ear, gratify your desires by talking, the zina of the tongue, right? Gratifying your desires by grabbing and touching, right? And gratifying your desires by going to places where people commit zina, okay? So these are the things that cause a person to lose faith as well, and that's super important. Now, just keep that list in mind because it's going to come important later. Now that we have a few of the mafatih, the keys to understanding our reasons why people lose faith, and especially young people, let's look at a list here, or let's look at a very important ayah in the Quran that tells us that we have someone who's going to try to exploit these things. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان فمن يتبع خطوات الشيطان فإنه يأمر بالفحشاء والمنكر. Which Allah is telling us, O believers, O people who have that candle burning inside of them of faith that allows them to sense the presence of the unseen around them, right? Do not follow the incremental steps of Satan. Whoever follows the incremental steps of Satan, then let them know that he surely bids all to immorality and wickedness. So the shaitan, Allah is telling us, is not going to come to you and get you to commit murder. He's going to come to you first and say, get angry at somebody, because he knows anger is a footstep in the wrong direction. He's not going to tell you, hey, go commit zina with somebody. No, he's going to say, hey, just look at them. Look at them. Right? Because he knows that's a footstep in the wrong direction. Or go be alone with them, or whatever he'll do. So we don't even take steps in the wrong direction, much less do we do the wrong thing. And to give you an example of what I mean, the Prophet ﷺ one day was making Hajj pilgrimage, and he had a man sitting on a camel near him, and he saw the man looking at a woman. And he literally physically pushed the man's face the other direction, so he was no longer looking at that woman, because he knew that that was going to have a negative impact on the man's faith. Okay? So let's take a look at one of the tools that the shaitan has used to destroy our faith, shall we?
تعرض الفتن على القلوب كالحصير. And the Prophet said that the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. عودا عودا. It has two lines, a horizontal and vertical line. This is the TV set. This is the set. It's a hasir. It's a mat. And the Prophet said the fitan will be shown to the hearts like a mat. كالحصير. And this is how Shaitan is destroying the hearts, by showing them the fitan on these films and on TV over and over again until people just become accustomed to violence. It's a normal thing. They're not shocked by it anymore.
So this is an interesting prophecy from the Prophet Muhammad. We say Allah and His Messenger know best here, right? This is just a ta'wil, right? But it's an interesting ta'wil. The Prophet said, "Tu'radul fitna." I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing this wrong. "Tu'radul fitan ala al-qulub kal-hasir." That tempting, troubling things will be shown to the hearts of people like a reed woven mat, line by line. So to understand this, a long time ago, when people used to make the sajada by hand, right, they would sew in vertical lines and horizontal lines to create a matrix of squares. And then depending on how they wove it, when they overlapped a line or they underlapped a line or they color coded the individual squares in a way, it would create a pattern on the hasir or the mat that would make an image appear. Now, the beginning of this hadith starts off with Umar ibn al-Khattab asking if anyone remembers a fitna that would come upon the people like waves of the ocean. So when we look today at our laptops, our iPads, our smart TVs, in many cases, and our smartphones, we find that the screen that we're watching receives its signal from waves of energy that come from Wi-Fi signals. So waves like the ocean, okay? He didn't say actual waves like the ocean, but waves like the ocean. And that's where the fitna that we're going to talk about coming up comes from, that our devices access. And what's interesting is that what we're seeing on our screens is not actual pictures and video, but really it's just a bunch of really small squares called pixels, millions of them, and they're color coded to fool your brain into thinking you're looking at an image. And if they change fast enough, it looks like the image is moving, and therefore you perceive video coming out of it. Okay, so it's very interesting parallel with this particular prophecy. But notice what the Prophet says about it. He says, the one whose heart is exposed to what they see on the mat, their heart will become black until a day comes in the future where there are only two types of heart. One that's completely black, meaning it's unable to experience the presence of the unseen. Its iman is gone, and therefore it has no guidance. And Allah knows best. Or a completely white heart, meaning it's fully in the presence of the unseen. It's aware of Allah. It's a believer, right? And it's guided. And the one whose heart is black will be like a vessel that can contain no good, not recognizing what is good or rejecting what's evil, but being filled with hawa, passions. So let's take a look at some of the fitan that comes from this hasir, shall we? Here's your first one. Hi, my name is TV. My job is to help destroy what's left of your imagination by feeding you endless doses of sugar-coated, mindless garbage. This tool was one of the first that was used of the hasir, of the mat. And what is wrong with this device? Well, the device itself isn't wrong. A TV in and of itself is just a TV. I mean, you can watch a cooking show, you can watch a khutbah, you can watch all kinds of wonderful things on a TV. But what do people often use TV for is to entertain themselves. And of course, there's tons of halal entertainment, right? Oftentimes try to remind parents and children, hey, entertainment is not just relegated to what you see on your screens. You can go outside and learn to skateboard, ride a bike, climb a mountain, go canoeing. How about starting a garden, raising some animals, have a pet, spend some time with your family playing a game, badminton, basketball, soccer, go swimming, right? Go help someone, right? Go visit people at the hospital who are sick. Go visit your grandparents. I mean, really, we could just list things all day that are what we call halal entertainment. Okay. And you can also learn about any of those things on TV, right? But what TV is being used for that destroys people's faith is when we watch munkar. Take note of this hadith because we're going to explain why that stuff destroys your faith. The Prophet ﷺ said, so this is an Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من رأى منكم منكرا Whoever amongst you sees evil, let him change it with his hand, meaning he or she physically stops that evil from happening. If he is unable to do that, then let him or her speak against the evil, like call it out. Tell people it's evil, it's wrong, and not to do it. And if they're unable to do so, then let them hate it in their heart, right? Don't sit back and see evil going and do nothing about it and say nothing about it, right? At least feel bad about it inside yourself. Like, this is wrong, this is evil, I don't enjoy this. And what does the Prophet ﷺ say about that? وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. When you don't stop it, when you don't speak against it, and all you do is hate it, then that's the weakest your Iman will ever be. What if you sit back and enjoy it? What if you're watching people on television drinking and consuming drugs, committing zina, having haram relationships, simulating murder, simulating violence against others, backbiting, slandering? That's all munkar. And that's what makes up the majority of what's called entertainment today on television. And if you, as a young Muslim, or you as an old Muslim, sit back and watch munkar, and you don't at least hate it in your heart, that means your faith is below the weakest of faith. So the first thing on our list that's destroying the faith of young people is when we stick them in front of these television sets and we let them watch munkar. The next thing.
So you're dealing with an addicted generation.
This is a big time bomb ticking.
This is no accident. Indeed, it is by design.
I mean, seriously?
It was my mistake.
I mean, I think we can all feel it.
To try to make these products as addictive as possible.
Spike in dopamine.
You know, we now know that many of the major social media companies hire individuals called attention engineers who borrow principles from Las Vegas casino gambling, among other places, to try to make these products as addictive as possible. That is the desired use case of these products, is that you use it in an addictive fashion because that maximizes the profit that can be extracted from your attention and data.
It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are.
The way the technologist Jaron Lanier puts it is that these companies offer you shiny treats in exchange for minutes of your attention and bytes of your personal data, which can then be packaged up and sold.
What happened is that the attention economy and this race for attention got more and more competitive. And the more competitive it got to get people's attention on, say, a news website, the more they need to add these design principles, these more manipulative design tactics, as ways of holding on to your attention.
You don't realize it, but you are being programmed.
Social media tools are designed to be addictive. The actual desired use case of these tools is that you fragment your attention as much as possible throughout your waking hours. That's how these tools are designed to use. Well, we have a growing amount of research which tells us that if you spend large portions of your day in a state of fragmented attention, so large portions of your day where you're constantly breaking up your attention, take a quick glance, do a just check, and just quickly look at Instagram, that this can permanently reduce your capacity for concentration. I am especially worried about this when we look at the younger generation coming up, which is the most saturated in this technology.
And it's very addictive because if you pull on the slot machine arm enough, you will win. And you never know which pull will reward you.
That's an addictive behavior, and it's dopamine that is driving that addiction. So what happens with social media is Robert Sapolsky, who did the foundational research on this at Stanford, calls it the magic of maybe. When you look at your phone and maybe there's a text there and maybe there's not, and you don't know, when it shows up, that high you get, that's dopamine. It's the magic of maybe. Maybe it'll be there, maybe it won't. When it shows up, you get a 400% spike in dopamine. That is roughly the same amount of dopamine as you're getting from cocaine. It's slightly less than an extremely addictive drug like cocaine. And that's what's happening.
We really care what other people think of us. So for example, you know, when you upload a new photo, a new profile photo of yourself on Facebook, that's a moment where our mind is very vulnerable to knowing what other people think of my new profile photo. And so when we get new likes on our profile photo, Facebook, knowing this, could actually message me and say, oh, you have new likes on your profile photo. And it knows that we'll be vulnerable to that moment because we all really care about when we're tagged in a photo or when we have a new profile photo.
So this is important to understand here. You and I, as human beings, are very social creatures. You know, a long time ago when the world was way more tribal and there wasn't all this technology, you know, you needed to have a good, strong family and tribe and clan. And so your brain would make you feel really good if you had good social relationships. Well, lo and behold, in the 21st century, when social media was invented, these tech companies tapped into that ancient part of your brain that rewards you with this thing called dopamine, okay? And this neurotransmitter in your body that makes you feel good and want to do certain activities, they're taking advantage and exploiting. Okay, so every time you get a like or a share or a tag in your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, right, you get a little bit of dopamine released in your brain. It makes you feel good. So what will that do to you if you do it every day? Well, if you imagine, for example, that this bottle of soda water here is all the dopamine you have in your brain, by the end of the day, it's like this bottle is now, where you just have a little bit of dopamine left. Why is that problematic? Well, dopamine is not just something to make you want to use your phone. You need dopamine for lots of different reasons, like completing normal everyday responsibilities, cleaning your room, making your dinner, doing your homework. All of those things require a little bit of dopamine to motivate you to do them. Well, guess what? One of the big things is you need that to motivate you to perform your Islamic rituals like prayer. And remember, we said we had an enemy called the shaitan? Allah says about him, yuridu shaitan. What the shaitan wants to do? Yasuddukum an dhikrillah wa anis salah. He wants you to forget about Allah and to stop performing prayer. Because once you stop performing prayer, you no longer have any protection from the shaitan. So one of the things he's doing with social media, which once again, there's nothing wrong with your smartphone in and of itself. And social media can be used to start a business, to spread beneficial knowledge to people, but it's how people are using it. What they're primarily using it for is to feed an addiction. And that addiction is depleting their body of dopamine, and they're becoming addicted to it, and therefore they don't have the desire to do their responsibilities. And your number one responsibility is to Allah. And when you stop praying, you destroy your faith. Because what's the first thing Allah says about faith? He says, believers are people who have khushu' in their prayers. And you can't concentrate in your prayer when you don't want to do it because you don't feel like it. Secondly, your attention is fragmented because you've been going through this social media platform that's constantly taking you here and there and everywhere. And so you can't focus in your prayers. Here's another thing that can be harmful to your faith.
The effects of video gaming, big plagues on our civilization. I'm talking about global civilization. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry with massive resources and power now. This is incredibly harmful. It's people die from this. There was a Japanese boy who gamed until he had a heart attack. People die from this. It's true there are only a small number of people that are going to get addicted in that way. This is what Islam is, a rahmah to people. So it prohibits things that are harmful. Anybody who studied fiqh knows there's a section on bay'. It's prohibited to sell alatul lahu. It's haram to sell games. You can make your own games, You know, like play games, children play games, rocks and stones. Little kids, they don't care what you give them. But to sell things and make money off lahu is prohibited in our Sharia. Nobody talks about this anymore. They just think, oh, you can just go and do this and it doesn't matter. You know, this is what's happened to us because Shaitan has taken us by steps. So if you look at these things, social isolation, drop in school performance, obesity, people that game are fatter than people that don't, wasting time, which is a great sin in our religion, to waste our time. It's sinful to waste time. Violent tendencies, we know this. Financial loss, decrease in empathy, you become less empathic. Average age of these players, 35 years old. What are you doing? Seriously, 35 years old is the average. There was a game called Tetris. And I had never done this before. So I started playing it, and it was really interesting. And I was, oh, okay. And I worked it out, and I don't even know how long I played it for. When I finished, I turned away and I was seeing those images come down. I never did it again. And my wife would testify, I don't play any of those games. I've never played any of those games. I am against those games. They're evil games. And I really encourage you just to give them up and utilize your time. Learn a language. Go talk to the Orang Asli about Islam. You know, go clean up. Get like volunteer groups that do litter pickup on your streets. You know, seriously, go do something useful. Go play soccer. Go visit your grandmother. Go to a hospital and visit people that aren't getting people visiting them. Do something useful, but don't waste your time doing this. 49% are 18 to 49-year-olds. 25% less than 18-year-old. 26% are over 50 years old. So this is Ammat al-Balwa. Look at the physical fight. Gamers, 40% of females have been in a physical fight in America, 51% of males. Look at the non-gamers, 14% as opposed to 28%. You know, and they'll say, oh, but you can't prove any correlation, right? You can't prove it. You don't need a rocket scientist to just know the obvious. Poor grades. Females, almost 40%, 35% of the males, as opposed to 20% and 23%. No relationship though, no correlation, can't prove it. Damaged property, 15% of the gamers, 23%. This is people going out and damaging property. In other words, delinquency. 5% of females, 10% of males, which is still high, I think. 89% of top-selling video games contain violent content. Half of it is of a serious nature. Highly criticized video game, Grand Theft Auto, which was actually developed by some criminals. They were real criminals, drug dealers. They came up with this idea. You get points by killing policemen. Look at this industry.
La ilaha illallah, subhanallah. This is the definition of munkar, right? Simulated or non-simulated. It destroys people's faith. And this is very important to understand, brothers and sisters in Islam. It's not a joke. You know, a lot of people, they don't take these games seriously. I've seen a lot of wealthy, highly educated Muslim families with these game systems in their homes. And when I asked the Muslim youth if they have these games that are mentioned in this presentation that I gave tonight, and they have them. And I'm quite shocked by that and very disappointed to see that you would put your children in front of something like that. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, Allah says. This is the best ummah, right? And originally this was revealed about the Sahaba. But what made them so great? Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. Because they stand up for what's right. وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And they don't sit there and watch munkar happen or participate in it. They stand up against it. وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. So this is really important. You know, when you're watching simulated murders on films and on social media and on video games, right, you're creating a very problematic situation for yourself, okay? And that's going to harm your faith because you can't sit back and watch munkar, brothers and sisters in Islam, and enjoy it. So at this point, I'd like to take a small commercial break. So just a reminder, I am your brother Isa Wood, and approximately, I don't know, 11 years ago, someone gave me an English translation of the Quran to read as a gift. And you know what? SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to guide me to Islam that way. And SubhanAllah, I just want to introduce you all to someone that I met about 4.5 years ago, so you can see his story about how he became Muslim before we continue with the rest of our program tonight. And this is a very important story because it illustrates the importance of us giving da'wah to people. So without further ado, brothers and sisters in Islam, I have a short video to play you.
Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmeen. We'll begin with God's blessed name. We praise Him and we thank Him. Yes. And we ask Him to send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad. Yes. Now, today we have with us brother Today, and I didn't say those words back to back on purpose. His name is actually Today, but it's not spelled like T-O-D-A-Y, is it?
No, it's spelled T-A-D-A-E.
Okay. Now, brother Today has expressed interest in joining the faith of Islam, so we've gone through explaining to him exactly what that means, and he seems to be very knowledgeable about what that means. So we encouraged him and invited him to come join the faith, and so that's what he's going to do right now, inshallah, God willing. So, are you ready to say the Shahada?
I've been ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So just repeat after me. I bear witness.
I bear witness
that there is no deity.
That there's no deity
worthy of worship.
Worthy of worship.
Except God.
Except the mighty God, mighty Allah.
And I bear witness.
And I bear witness
that Muhammad.
That Muhammad
is God's messenger.
Is God's messenger.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Okay, so now we're going to say it in Arabic. You ready?
Yes.
Ashhadu.
Ashhadu.
Allah.
Allah.
Ilaha.
Ilaha.
Illallah.
Illallah.
Wa. Ashhadu. Anna. Muhammadan. Rasul.
Allah.
MashaAllah, this brother, he received a free Quran through our program when he had gotten pulled over after an incident with the police. And he had to go to jail for a little bit of time. And he got a free copy in prison from our Quran distribution program at Al-Furqaan project. MashaAllah, he read it and he came to the masjid, and this is him taking his Shahada. Do you know what this brother is doing 4.5 years later? He is the assistant imam of the Islamic Center of the Piedmont, giving khutbahs in Arabic, leading us in salat. MashaAllah, the last khutbah I attended was brother, his name now is Yusuf Hanif. And he's a very, very pious, mashallah, good Muslim. So imagine you, brother or sister, tonight, were someone who decided to go to the Al-Furqaan project website here and sponsor the Qur'ans that we distribute. And they ended up in the hands of someone like brother Today. Imagine all of the benefits you're going to get. Please don't miss this opportunity tonight, brothers and sisters in Islam. We have 500,000 of these, about $1 million worth of Quran to print after Ramadan is over, and we need to raise the money for that. So consider going to the Al-Furqaan project website you see here and clicking on one of these donation amounts. Okay, you can donate a box for $104. That's 52 translations that we'll give to a prison or a hospital or a dorm room on your behalf. A non-Muslim will be able to read this for free. You can even sponsor huge amounts, like 100 boxes of Quran for $10,400. You can do that as a monthly donor. You can donate less than these amounts and you can donate more, but do your best to donate whatever you can. And try also to go to sendthequran.com. And here you can actually send a free English or Spanish translation of the Quran, as well as brochures about Islam to your neighbors, classmates, coworkers, customers, and patients for free. All you do is pay the shipping and handling. So thank you for that small commercial break. Now back to our presentation. Now, I mentioned that this particular program is for 13 up and only. So once again, I'm just warning you ahead of time. This presentation, if you are not at least 13 years old, you need to log out. You need to stop watching, okay? Because it's not intended for you. And if you are a parent and you're watching this right now and you have any children younger than 13 in the room, you need to ask them to leave. Okay, this particular fitna that I'm about to show you that's also on the screen is the worst of them. When I travel throughout the country, I'm finding imams, I'm finding Quran students, I'm finding Muslim youth, very young Muslim youth, and Muslim youth all over the world, from Britain to America to Algeria to Tunisia to Pakistan, who are suffering from an addiction to quite possibly the most destructive thing to our faith. So without further ado, I need you all to sit down and say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Because what I'm about to show you is a huge fitna. And we need to be open to talk about this in our communities. SubhanAllah, I did an episode of the Dean Show approximately back in January on this topic that I'm about to talk about. And a lot of people liked it. In fact, out of 17,000 views of my episode, I had over 700 likes and only about 7 dislikes. And if you read the comment section on my video, you find that the Muslim youth are very happy that someone is about to talk about this subject, because they know that many of them are struggling and many of their friends are struggling with this addiction, this faith-destroying activity. Whereas a lot of the Muslim parents are not aware of what's going on, and so they become quite shocked when they learn about this. But brothers and sisters in Islam, being shocked about it doesn't change that there's a problem, okay? So let's just sit back and understand what's going on, and then we can do something about it. The greatest fitna affecting the young people in this world today is pornography. It is now seen by 90% of Americans. It's the #1 form of media entertainment, greater than the entire sport industry combined. How did we get to this point? Well, remember when we talked about that group of people who had become nuns? We said that 20 million people from 2007 to 14 had left religion. Well, what's interesting is when you read the details about that, you find that most of them are men and most of them are part of the millennial generation. Would you like to know what happened to the millennial generation that had happened to no generation before them? In fact, most of the fitan that we mentioned tonight, they were the first generation introduced to them. The first generation introduced to social media, the first generation introduced to violent video games, and the first generation to have access to pornography in their homes. So by the mid-90s, this is the first time it comes into people's homes in the form of desktop computers connected to the internet. That all changed in around 2017 when all of this content started to be accessed on smartphones. Now, when we talk about this subject, we need to understand that desires are natural. There's nothing wrong with being attracted to someone of the opposite gender, okay? In fact, that's a good thing. Hopefully, that will cause you to eventually get into a halal marriage relationship, and it will be a successful and happy relationship. And so no one needs to feel bad about having desires, but it's how the shaitan is twisting the outlet for those desires and calling us towards things that will destroy our faith. Why does pornography destroy your faith worse than anything? Remember those 5 types of zina I told you about? Looking, listening, touching. Well, pornography covers all those bases. You watch it, you listen to it, and what you do while you watch it. And so that zina that you're committing by watching this stuff will put out the candle of light inside of you that allows you to experience the unseen. These are the statistics so that you understand that when I say this is ubiquitous and widespread, I mean it. In 2017, just one website that hosts this content out of millions of other websites boasted of having 28.5 billion annual visitors. That's enough for every single person on earth to have visited the website about 4 times a year. Now, someone might say, maybe they're just lying about their statistics. Well, how these websites make money is by selling advertising. And so they have an obligation to advertisers to provide them with accurate statistics of what their website is capable of producing in terms of views. And if they are misleading advertisers, not only will they lose that advertising money, but they can be taken to court for misrepresenting statistics. So it's highly unlikely that they are actually making these numbers up. In fact, it's probably very accurate. 81 million average daily views. That's unbelievable. Scroll down a little bit and you find out that this industry receives more traffic than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined each month. Wow. SubhanAllah. The average age a child is exposed to this is 11 because there's a 1 in 17 chance that you will see this content by mistake every time you use an internet accessible device. They found that 73% of women in one study and 98% of men reported using this content in the last 6 months. They tried to do a study on college campuses of men who watched this content. And when they wanted to create a control group of men who had never seen it, they literally could not find a single man on campus who wasn't watching it. That's how widespread this fitna is. So why is it spreading so rapidly? Why is it even worse than all the other ones? Well, because it's easily accessible and because it's highly addictive. We all know Allah tells us in the Quran, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ, that the number one desire on the list of desires for men especially is women. So it's very, very easy for a man to become addicted to this content, but there are also sisters who use it. I've actually spoken to Muslim women who have admitted using this content. But what I wanted to point out is all of the Muslim youth I've talked to who've left Islam, who admitted having an addiction to this content before they left the religion, because it is munkar, you're enjoying it, and it is a type of zina, which the Prophet said would cause faith to leave you. And the thing is, people don't just use it one time. They start using it every day, multiple times a day. And so that's why their faith leaves them and doesn't come back. So here's the proof that it destroys your faith from non-Muslim PhD psychologists and psychiatrists. Here's Psychology Today, an online periodical written by PhD psychiatrists and psychologists. An interesting effect happens when people watch pornography. They become less religious and may even experience more crises of faith. Psychology Today. They found that when religious people with lower self-esteem that they are more likely to experience difficulties with the use of this content, and it contributes to greater feelings of anger in general and anger towards God. When religious people use more porn, their anger towards God and the general irritability both increase. What did Allah say? فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ, whoever seeks a way outside of halal marriage to gratify their desires, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ, they become a transgressor against Allah and his limits. They become angry at the Sharia, angry at believers, angry at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because those are the things telling them that they have limits and they're going beyond the limits. And so they become aggressors against faith. And of course, you can't harm Allah, and Allah is with the believers also. So all you end up doing is harming yourself. In fact, regardless of relationship status, Psychology Today says individuals who viewed this content daily were on the border of severe depression. Turns out video game addiction, social media addiction, entertainment addiction, and yes, pornography addiction, all of them lead to depression, because when you cut off that light, that candle inside of you, and you are no longer guided and your heart becomes blackened with all of the sins you're committing, then you become very depressed without being able to experience the presence of Allah around you. Very important. And this, of course, is the smoking gun that this is an evil thing. It's actually used as a weapon. So the Israeli Defense Force in 2002, they were in a war with the Palestinians, and so they invaded the West Bank town of Ramallah. So, and while they were there, they took over 3 of the 4 public access Palestinian Authority programming channels, and they began to play these videos 24 hours a day so that unsuspecting Palestinian residents would turn on their televisions expecting to see the news and instead would see people committing zina. Why would a military establishment that collects tax money from its citizens risk the lives of its military professionals to take over the television stations of their enemies, quote unquote, in order to play these videos for them if they didn't know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it would have a negative impact on the enemy population? It would ruin their marriages. It would destroy their faith. It would make them weak. And now it's being used as a weapon on all of humanity.
So, you know, the amazing thing about the human brain and eye is that you can't unsee and you can't unremember what you saw. So my first look at pornography was by mistake. I actually walked into, we did an exam, kids were on break, they went and got a VCR, a bunch of stack of videos when I was in college, just entered college, and I walked into their room and I walked in and I turned to the right and I saw the image on the television. I didn't know what I was gonna see and I'd never seen it before, but I remember that image right now. To this day, if I close my eyes right now, I can remember that image. I know exactly what was going on, the scenario, the place, what was happening. That first image was 40 years ago. Okay, it was 25 years ago, making myself older, sorry. I should be subtracting. Anyway, the problem is, you know, we're not like a computer. We can't go and delete our hard drive. And the worst part about it is that when you're in solitude, when your eyes are closed, when you're trying to think about your Lord, and when you're trying to pray, that's when it gets you. It's not sitting here right now, you know, that I would have that image pop into my brain. And alhamdulillah, one of the things I realized is some of those kids that were my friends, once they got a taste of it, man, they would make a straw as long as a mile wide to get more. And for me, I looked at it, and alhamdulillah, I swear, I make dua, I do shukr to Allah that this day that my initial reaction was disgust. Because had it not been, you don't know. You're just rolling the dice. You don't know if you're gonna get a 1 or a 6. And a 6 means you're in, man. You cannot get out of that. You're gonna fight with that for the whole life. I was disgusted by it and I still remember it. Right, alhamdulillah, whenever I came across it, I didn't need it. I didn't have to affect it, but those kids that went into it, I couldn't be friends with them anymore because they were on a track where they wanted something different. And let's be real, boys on the internet, it's visual and it's porn. Girls, what they want is validation, friends. You want to be with 17 friends. Oh, does she like me? Does she think I'm her friend? Does she like my picture? How do I look? Do I get validation? So the addiction is very different for girls and boys. So we have.
So this is, you know, just important to understand. Brother Isa is not telling you that all technology is wrong and all desires are wrong and you can't use anything, right? If you could live that kind of lifestyle, great. You know, if you can live without a laptop and a smartphone and all these things that, you know, access things that destroy your faith. Hey, I know people that do that, right? And they're very successful with it and very happy. But if you know that you can't get the smartphone and the laptop and the TV out of your life, well, then at least understand how those things can be used to destroy your faith and the faith of your families. Okay. And the same thing applies to desires. Desires aren't wrong. If you're a young person watching this tonight, you know, listen, there's nothing wrong with desires, right? But it's when your desires are channeled in this destructive way, right, that it destroys your faith. Now, the last couple of things that destroy faith are, of course, actual zina. And we just need to be real tonight, okay? There's nothing wrong with admitting what's going on. I know it's difficult to grasp that this has gotten this bad, but let's just be realistic here. That way we can at least assess the problem and how to solve it. According to actual statistics done on real Muslim college students in North America, they found that 67% of Canadian and US Muslim youth had already had premarital relationships, zina. And I've seen this with my own eyes, heard plenty of stories of, the Muslim sister who used to wear hijab and she used to pray 5 times a day, but she got that boyfriend and hijab came off and the prayers stopped and the shaitan got her, right? And now she's talking to her parents about how she doesn't want to be Muslim anymore. I think we need to understand that, when you start going down that road, the Prophet ﷺ warned that if a man and a woman are alone in a room together and they are not mahram for each other, right? That's not his sister or his mother, then the shaitan is the third, tempting them to do more. That is the number one khutuwati shaitan. And I can tell you where the Muslim youth are being inspired to do this stuff. It's from the pornography and from all of the non-Muslims around them who are engaging in these activities. So I need you to understand, brothers and sisters in Islam, that I know this is a difficult thing to understand and grasp, but it's happening and we need to admit it. This is destroying the faith of our children, and it's happening primarily in colleges. What about drugs and alcohol? The Prophet mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that consuming intoxicants would destroy your faith. Look at these statistics. Once again, actual Muslim youth, 47%. Now with this statistic, it was 2/3, and the remaining 50%, so the remaining 33%, half of them actually wanted to commit zina, but just didn't do it because of whatever reason. That literally leaves like around 17% of the actual Muslim college students who neither committed zina nor wanted to. In this case, it's almost half Muslim youth engaging in alcohol. That's a huge number. And the real dangers of drugs and alcohol is that all of the, the trials and tribulations that I've mentioned so far, the social media, the television, the pornography, the zina, the video games, you can stop all those things right now and never do them again, and you won't be harmed at all. There's no real physical side effect from it. Okay. I mean, you may feel the desire to want to do them the next day, but it's not going to hurt you physically. But drugs and alcohol are extremely difficult to give up. And no one ever thinks they're going to be an addict. Everyone thinks like, oh, I'm just going to try this, or I'm going to do it a few times, or I'm going to do it socially. No one ever thinks that it's going to harm them in the long run. My best friend in elementary school, he tried drinking when he was like 17. And before he even, I think, got to his 18th birthday, or around the time he had his 18th birthday, he went drunk driving and hit a telephone pole and died. So he had just started drinking, literally, and it already killed him. I have family members that are absolutely addicted to drugs. It's destroyed their lives. It's killed some of them. They're 6 feet deep. They never, ever, ever thought years ago in high school when they first tried drugs and alcohol that they were going to eventually die in their grandmother's basement in a love seat or drown in a swimming pool. These are real stories. I'm not making them up. These are people I knew who are no longer with us, and drugs destroyed them. But the worst thing it did to them was it destroyed their faith. It's one thing to be killed by something, but still have faith. You have Jannah waiting for you. But to be killed by something and to lose your faith from it, not only did you die a tragic death, but you have a tragic afterlife waiting for you in Jahannam without Allah's forgiveness. Finally, we need to understand that there is something very sinister that some of our Muslim youth are engaging in, and because the non-Muslim youth are also engaging in it, and that is theft. And it's not that Muslims are stealing iPhones and apples from the supermarket, but it's that they're virtually stealing things. So intellectual properties that are sold online, they're going online and taking them and not paying for them. They usually call this looking for the cracked or the free version of something. So they steal people's identities, their credit card numbers, they steal video games they want, books, PDFs, movies, and music. And what did the Prophet say? That when you steal, it causes faith to leave you. And stealing intellectual properties, digital media, is just the same as stealing an Apple or an iPhone. You're taking something that doesn't belong to you. You're not paying for it. and it will destroy your faith. Just like we mentioned at the beginning, no one steals when people are looking. So no one is going to steal something when they think Allah is looking. They have to stop believing that Allah is looking long enough to do it. And that's why it destroys their faith. So what is the good news here, brothers and sisters in Islam? Well, these are the things destroying the faith of our children. It is very highly likely that most young people you know are engaged in one or many of these activities. There would be very few left who doesn't fall into one of these groups. Some of these are much worse than others, okay? And if you are a young person and you've never engaged in any of these activities, it is almost impossible that you will not at least be exposed to them. So the question is, how do we respond? Number one, for those who've never been exposed to any of these things, the first time you come across them, you need to be like the Prophet said. Don't allow evil to happen in front of you. If you can stop it, stop it. If you can say that it's wrong to people, tell them it's wrong, but at least be disgusted by it. Just like that man mentioned the first time he was ever exposed to those pornographic films, he was disgusted by it. And he thanks Allah for that, because that caused him to never want to go back to it. So I say that because I was even told by one Muslim family who sent their children to West Africa to memorize Quran, that even after speaking to their son after some time, they found out that even the children in the village were climbing to the high mountains to get a few signals from the major city on their phone so they could download this evil image and movies. So it's hard to avoid this anywhere on earth today. So the number one thing, be disgusted by it. Don't enjoy it. Get away from it. Do not befriend or remain friends with people who engage in this stuff. But you need to be properly educated about your religion too. Lack of knowledge is also destroying the faith of our children. Okay. I sat in a room full of young Muslims one time. We just prayed Isha, and I asked them point blank who understood what was recited in prayer, and none of them raised their hand. These are Arab children. You know, it's their language. And this was a wealthy community with Islamic schools and Quran memorization programs. And they were clear. They didn't understand the prayer, right? So just basic things in our religion, we're not educating our children about. So their faith doesn't develop very well. They have a hard time connecting with the religion. And then finally, hypocrisy, right? So imagine if I told you not to do all these things tonight, and then behind your back, I was doing any of them. Wallahi, I can't teach any subject in Islam except that I don't engage in any of this stuff. Well, what if your parents are telling you not to do it and they do it? So they say, don't watch this haram stuff on television, but at night they're watching their Hollywood, Bollywood movies while the children are asleep, right? Parents, we can't be hypocrites, because if our children catch us being hypocrites, then they will not follow our advice. And I've had Muslim children tell me point blank, they left Islam because of the hypocrisy they saw amongst the adults. So the good news is this, brothers and sisters in Islam, wallahi al-azim, feel good about this, because there are easy solutions to this problem. I know people who had every single one of these addictions at the same time. Everything on that list. They didn't have the proper knowledge. They had hypocrite parents, hypocrite leaders. They were addicted to every single one of those things. But subhanAllah, when they saw the guidance in Islam, they made tawbah. They stopped the activity, asked for forgiveness, never went back to it again, and resolved not to return by changing their lifestyle and engaging in the activities that increase faith. And I'm not joking with you at all. I've met these people, and alhamdulillah, they are strong believers to this day. They never went back to this stuff again. Okay? But you have to recognize that it's wrong first and make tawbah. Listen to the wisdom of Brother Farid. He says, a person will sin and insist upon sinning until they no longer recognize guilt. Then they ask themselves, why would God even care about this particular sin? Then they think, does God even exist? Then it is almost as if their faith is stripped away from their hearts. Guilt is a blessing. Guilt leads us to tawbah, brothers and sisters in Islam. You know, the first time anyone encounters any of the things on this list and they engage in them, everyone feels bad. Everyone feels bad. Maybe not while you were doing it, but after you did it, because you recognize that it stole your faith temporarily. And so that's a blessing from Allah. It's telling you that that thing was wrong and turn away from it. And alhamdulillah, every single Muslim who makes tawbah, meaning you sincerely stop the activity and ask Allah to forgive you, then that light can now come back on. You just need to give it a little bit of time. Just a little bit of time, that light will come back on and you'll start to feel the presence of Allah around you again. Just be patient. And then we have to engage in activities that will protect us. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. Right? Turn away from the evil. Don't look at it. Don't watch it. Don't enjoy it. Right? And protect yourself. So, young people, my advice to you is this, and this is advice based on actual people who had these problems and left them and are good practicing Muslims today with high iman. Try not to be alone. Be among good people, which I know is difficult under the current circumstances, but be a part of the masjid. Find Muslim friends who practice and believe in the religion and who don't do these activities and don't ask you to do them. Be around as many good people as you can. Number 2, remain steadfast on your prayer. Okay? Remember the shaitan? فَإِنَّهُ يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. He wants to command you to do evil and immoral things to destroy your faith. But Allah says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. That your prayer actually causes the evil to go away. So remaining steadfast upon your prayer, staying in wudu, right? Staying in a state of ghusl, right? You've bathed properly. You're not in a state of janaba. And praying on time will protect your faith and increase it. Avoid mixing with the opposite gender, right? If you're 13, 14 years old, you've already started to feel those feelings. Don't go places where people are going to be completely dressed improperly, right? You got to stay away from those places. And if you go and you go somewhere and you see people that aren't dressed properly, you need to turn away from them. Remember, the Prophet turned the man's face away from the woman, right? Don't allow yourself to look at other people's bodies or magazines or pictures or anything that has that, because you know what it's going to do to your faith. We've proven that tonight. Be a person of dhikr. Every single Muslim youth should have a small booklet called Nisful Muslim, the Fortress of the Muslim. I think it's like $1 on most Islamic bookstore websites. Inside of it are different parts of the Quran you recite every day, different dua, supplications that you make in the morning and in the evening, and dhikr, like things you do to remember Allah in all of your actions. So you go to bed tonight, you say, Bismika Allahumma amutu wa ahya. In the name of Allah, I live and I die. When you get up in the morning, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana ba'da amatana wa ilayhi nushur. All praise and thanks to Allah who brought us back to life after our death, and to him we will all be gathered. Okay? Whenever you leave your house, Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allahi la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. In the name of Allah, on whom I put my trust, and there is no strength or power except with Allah. When you come in your house, Bismillahi walajna wa Bismillahi kharajna wa ala Allahi rabbina tawakkalna. In the name of Allah, I enter and I leave. Right? You see, everything you do that you turn into an act of dhikr, all of a sudden, every aspect of your life becomes an act of worship, an act of increasing your faith, your consciousness of Allah. So all of this stuff is important for protecting your iman and increasing it. And being a person who makes dua often. Ask Allah to protect you. The last 2 that will protect your faith more than anything and increase it, once you've made tawbah, if you're doing any of these things, you have to make tawbah first, or it's not going to work the way it's supposed to, is fasting. And I'm not talking about just Ramadan, brothers and sisters in Islam. I'm talking about Mondays and Thursdays if you can, or the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every lunar month, right? Or the 6 days of Shawwal, or the 9 days of Dhul Hijjah, or the day of Ashura, right? All of these opportunities to do voluntary fasting. Because voluntary fasting, kutiba alaykum al-siyam, Allah gave us la'allakum tattaqun, so that we would be people who are conscious of Allah. Because when you're fasting, nobody knows you're fasting except Allah. And no one knows if you broke your fast except Allah. So it turns on that light. It feeds it with fuel. And of course, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, once you become a person conscious of Allah, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Now you can open the Quran and recite it and be guided by it, because that is the book about which there is no doubt a guidance for people with taqwa. So young Muslims out there, take this advice. And I would never tell you to do something that I don't do myself and that I have not seen actually help other Muslim youth. Okay? This is not theory, brothers and sisters in Islam. This is what we see curing our young people of these problems. Make tawbah and take everything on this list seriously. And it's up to you. If you're 13, 14 years out, now you're, most of you, if you reach puberty, you're accountable to Allah for your actions. You can't blame your sins on your parents anymore, right? It's now your responsibility. To the parents who are out there, if you can, try to get these devices out of your homes. If that's not possible, then at least keep them in public rooms. Don't give, especially young children, I mean, this is terrible, these internet accessible devices to have by themselves, right? How do you know when a child is ready for an internet accessible device? Well, here's a good thing, that they have self-discipline, okay? So, for example, they pray 5 times a day, and you don't have to make them. They fast the entire month of Ramadan, unless they have an excuse to break their fast, and you don't have to make them. They're self-disciplined enough, at least to give Allah the rights that Allah deserves. If they can do that, then you can give them an internet accessible device, provided you sit them down and explain to them the dangers that we mentioned tonight. Okay, so they know the evil that these devices can be used for, and they don't engage in them. And if they do, they know how to respond. Okay, but if your children don't even practice Salah, they're not even fasting Ramadan, and you're going to give them an internet accessible device and let them have it, do you not think the shaitan is going to take advantage of that, brothers and sisters in Islam? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Right? Are you not thinking? Come on, of course he is. We have an enemy. He's called Aduwwun Mubin. He will try to mislead you and your children into the hellfire. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith, qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save your family from a fire that's fueled by people and stones. You know, brothers and sisters in Islam, I'm talking to dads here especially. Don't just give your family these technologies until you assess that they're ready for them and they have been provided the proper information. Or when their faith is destroyed by them, you're going to be punished with them. And this is serious. Practice what you preach, brothers and sisters in Islam. Educate your children about the harms of these devices. The device itself isn't evil, but it's what people are using them for. So we'll end here tonight, brothers and sisters in Islam. I've done my best to try to show you some of the things that are affecting the Muslim youth. And wallahi, I wouldn't even tell you these things if I hadn't been told by the youth themselves. Okay? And they're very happy that someone is actually talking about these things. So imams and Islamic centers need to start bringing this to the attention of their communities as soon as possible, because people being stuck in their houses right now, away from the Jama'at, the Muslim community, these are the main things that can even destroy their faith in the house. So, brothers and sisters in Islam, I don't have all the answers. If you have anything additional you'd like to add, put a presentation together and start teaching us. Right? These are not the only reasons people lose faith, but these are some of the modern reasons leading to massive apostasy from all religions, not just Islam. And once again, these things in and of themselves will not cause a person to leave Islam, but once faith leaves them, then it's easy for a person to succumb to doubts, shubuhat. Someone can come along and tell them something bad about Islam or the Prophet or the Quran. And since their faith is gone because of these major sins that they're involved in, these doubts start to take root and people start to pursue the doubts. Whereas a believer would say, no, I'm going to find out how that shubuhat really isn't legitimate. And that doubt will bounce right off of them. It won't take root inside of them. It won't be allowed to grow because the faith is being protected. Okay? اللهم إنا نسألك بأن لك الحمد يا حنان يا بديع السماوات والأرض يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed we have wronged our own souls. And if you don't have mercy on us and forgive us, we will certainly be people who are the dissidents of the hellfire. اللهم ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not cause our hearts to deviate from faith after you've guided us, and indeed you're the one who bestows faith on whomever you choose. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let us see truth as truth and follow it, and let us see falsehood as falsehood and keep us away from it. Allahumma arina al-ashya'a kama hi. O Allah, let us see things as they really are. Allahumma rabbana hab lana min azwajina wa dhurriyyatina qurratu a'yunin waj'alna lil-muttaqina imama. O Allah, cause our spouses and our children to be pleasing to our eyes because of their faith, and allow us to be leaders for them, guiding them towards that which is pleasing to you in this life and in the next. Allahumma hadi shababatul muslimin ya arhamar rahimin. O Allah, we ask you to give firm guidance to the Muslim youth and to protect them. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to accept our dars from us this evening, and we turn to you in repentance for any mistakes we've made. For certainly you're the only one who can forgive our sins. And we ask that we are all called to turn away from any of these sins that we've engaged in, because no matter how awful we've been, brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah is always there ready to forgive us for any wrongs that we've done. Don't ever feel like you have too many sins. No, you have a whole bunch of tawbah to make. And every time you make tawbah, you're rewarded for it. And Allah brings you closer and closer and closer to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So we ask, Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us and to guide us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and protect us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, don't forget, make a donation tonight. If you enjoyed what you liked, this is all provided to you tonight for free by Al-Furqaan Project, educating our Muslim community and also educating the non-Muslim community through your donations. Go tonight. You can see the website on the screen, and it's alfurqaanfoundation.givingfuel.com, Furqaan/project. And you can click on any amount you like, or you can put in your own unique amount, donate, and we will print Quran and give them out on your behalf. And we already talked about, you can also do it with brochures. And we already talked about myself being guided to Islam this way, as well as other people. You can go to the Furqaan Studios page that this was live streamed on tonight and see many people who became Muslim through our program and through the free distribution of translations of the Quran. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.